council work meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. on Monday, April the 16th. Members present this evening are myself, Mayor Marl, council members Dillon, Gearbaugh, McClellan, Mitchell, and Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Councilmember Seal will be absent from both the regular meeting and the work meeting this evening. From staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, Treasurer Bennett, Deputy Treasurer McDonough is in the lines behind us. And we're joined at the table this evening by Parks and Rec Director Scruggs, Police Chief Hart, and DPW Director Fordyce. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, if you'd be so kind to sign in the back, we would appreciate that. There are also agendas on the back table. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted, unless there are amendments. As submitted, Ms. Dillon? Yes. Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilwoman McClellan. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We come now to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments? No citizen comments. Then we will proceed to the discussion portion of our agenda. This is our second meeting to consider the 2018-2019 general operating budget for the city of Saline. I hope you found our initial discussion worthwhile and beneficial. There has been, a variety of supplemental material that's been provided to you subsequent to our last meeting. Unless the city manager has comments, I don't know if you do. I'm going to, well, if you do, if you do or if you don't, I'm going to then yield the floor to Treasurer Bennett to give a brief statement. And then we will proceed with hearing from Director Scruggs, Police Chief Hart, and DPW Director Fordyce, talking about their specific departments and their impact on the budget, which is, as you know, pretty significant, pretty profound. This is how it's going to work this evening. Subsequent to Ms. Bennett's comments, we yield the floor to Director Scruggs. Director Scruggs, if you want to talk about any significant changes within your budget from the previous fiscal year, or any other pertinent information, we would appreciate that. Subsequent to your presentation, we'll open it up for questions. When we've exhausted the questions, then we'll proceed to the police department and we'll follow the same protocol, same standard. So with that, unless there are questions for me, I will turn it over to Ms. Bennett. Again, remember we are recording this, so please be sure to speak into the microphone. Do you have anything that you'd like to add at this time? Then Ms. Bennett, the floor is yours.
Okay, so all right, so I really did have a lot to prepare for this evening. We did submit the change budget in the packet on Monday, or in the packet last week that itemized the changes in the general fund. It was very insignificant. And then we had printed off and the supplemental information that I submitted to you this afternoon, which kind of, I sent it in an email late this afternoon. It's just basically telling you the items in that memo. It said we changed it by 1,000, but this just spelled it out a little bit more to see that the net impact was only 1,133 to the positive. Basically what that reflects is a change in the March quarter review minutes for tax revenue. And then we're taking $10,000 out of the innovations fund to move it to just changed it in a line item, moving it to a contribution to the EDC, and then the balance of that $10,000 went into a professional service line item in Todd's budget for hopefully an event for businesses possibly later this October. Then, in addition to those, I think Joanne also, Mr. Gearbaugh had requested some debt schedules, so I think those were submitted to you. This information, this debt information, is available out on our website. It's part of the dashboard. I'm sorry, the brain's a little foggy. It's part of the dashboard that's out there, but Joanne did go through and tweak it, putting where each out of the principal amount, which funds and stuff that's coming. So she did get that information available as well. But all that information is out there on our dashboard as part of our transparency. So unless there's any, our significant change for the general fund budget
questions for Ms. Bennett, Mr. Gearba?
The only concern I have, and I don't really want to this, is that $8,000 potential subsidy is going to happen from time to time. Or is that 10,000?
No, that's why we moved it to the contribution. It's not very. And
But it is in that 10,000. It's part of it.
$8,335 was moved. It says from admin costs to transfer out the EDC for farmer's market. That's on the disclosure.
And I don't know, council, it'll be under, it was discussed on the last EDC board meeting, that because we actually eliminated Tuesdays, we've eliminated Tuesdays, we've added more staff hours, and now as a result, we're going to provide $8,300 open town hours in terms of support for that operation. So it's really starting to subsidize the farmer's market and some of the competition and everything else out there. So in fact, when we put it in the budget, without really discussing it, as a hit on our actual operating costs, I think it's a little but that's why I'm wondering about this point.
Any other questions? Ms. McDonough, anything you'd like to add at this time? No? Okay, thank you for your work on this, Joanne. We appreciate you being here. Then we'll turn it over to Director Scruggs. Carla, we appreciate you being here. The floor is yours.
Okay.
Should be on. Yep. As long as the green light is illuminated at the base, it should be on.
I'll try to speak into it. So I think the first thing you want to do is like kind of highlight the biggest change or.
Well, why don't you give an overview to your budget, and then you want to highlight some significant changes and long-term goals and strategies that may have an impact on the bottom line of the city. That would be great. Anything else that you think is germane, and then we'll open it up for questions.
So I think the biggest thing or the biggest change in this year's budget is that we do now have a work bond. And that's going to be a $127,000 bond that's coming, or that we're paying out each year. Because of that, we're going to have a lot of changes in the budget, I guess. I mean, we're going to operate our programs in a for-profit way, like we always do. We're going to keep pushing memberships, still attracting a lot of people, keeping that retention and whatnot. But I think the biggest thing is the capital program, or the capital projects that we've been able to do over the past few years. We're going to be kind of slowing down on those things and maybe pushing some off in the future years until we can kind of get a good handle on having that $127,000 bond payment each year. I guess, some of the things during our initial strategic planning session on Saturday, I talked about the goals and I kind of outlined them in the information that was given to you already. So I don't know if you have any questions on that you'd like me to address, but I think that's kind of self-explanatory. My staff and I meet every year in October and go through our SWOT analysis, and then we develop our goals based on our SWOT and what we feel needs to be done for this next fiscal year. And I think they're very solid goals. They're smart goals. So in any event, I'll just keep moving through, talking about strategies for revenue increasing. Obviously, marketing, our number one seller, which is the rec center, is top priority. Continuing to reach out to our Saline area school district residents, our industry, and then also recently, I don't know if you kind of followed it a little bit, but we've had two facilities in Saline that have recently closed, Snap Fitness and Curbs. And we're starting to get some of those people coming over to us, which is a good thing. But I think there's some potential to reach out to them even further to bring them in and draw them in. Another strategy for our revenue, baseball, whatnot. So I think that's going to kind of give us another dimension of the rec center, of some things to do there, and I feel strongly that it's going to be a nice little revenue stream for us. Strategies, I guess, for decreasing our expenditures, utilizing grants, reaching out, trying to increase our sponsorship and donations that we receive. I don't believe that we can be any more frugal with our, like when we're doing our programs, we're always very cautious to get the best deals using coupons and, percentage off when we're ordering products and whatnot. So I think, and my staff is all on board when we're having to do any type of purchasing. We're very, we're constantly looking for good deals and bargains and getting quotes and so on and so forth. Some of the expenditure items that we have included in the budget that are a little bit different, other than our regular just operational costs. In our capital projects, we had to replace all of our interior doors in our pool area. And during our meeting last week, I believe, we looked at possibly, could we maybe do like some of them this year and then some of them next year. And I did meet with my maintenance supervisor. Definitely that $17,000 we could cut in half. So maybe $8,000 this year to replace 3 of the doors, and then the following year I'll replace the other 5. There's eight interior doors in the aquatic center. They just get a lot of corrosion and wear and tear throughout the years. So that would be programmed at $8,000 to replace 3 of the doors. The $7,000 for the batting cages, that's a wash.
I'm sorry, just so that I'm clear, is the 8,000 that you're referring, are these dollar amounts that are currently in this budget as full
Yes.
numbers? And you're looking, okay.
In there is a $17,000 expenditure. And what I'm saying right now is that we could actually reduce that somewhat, so we'll be not spending all $17,000. We'd only be spending $8,000. I haven't heard anything.
The doors with the company that went bankrupt, how is that going to be, is that in the budget? Do we need to do that deal or?
Yeah, that company got business, and got bankruptcy, working through the, city attorney's office, and a lot of my help for our team.
But
So,
we went ahead and bought doors and replaced them. Carl was talking about doors.
Not yet. Right, we're looking at, in fact, tomorrow, Brian is going over to Eastern Michigan. They have a couple of alternative doors or type of ADA closures that they're using over there. And he's going to take a site visit to visit those and see if they will be appropriate for ours, and to get a vendor and try to figure that out. That would be 3 openers. Two for the pool hallway and 3 for the locker room. And then other expenditure items included is resurfacing of the pool deck, which I've said this before. This is if I had a solution, I could sell this to just about every other facility around for a foolproof solution. But one thing came to mind as an idea. My aquatics director, Stephanie, had suggested maybe we phase this and end up putting tile in. Tile is definitely a long-term solution. It's more expensive. However, if we could phase this, it might be a more reasonable expenditure over the next 3 to 4 years. And definitely it's more of that long-term 30-year solution rather than every 5 to 7 years having to replace a pool deck. So we're now talking with tile companies, trying to figure out how we can make this work. just wear and tear from chemicals and whatnot. So that is something that does need to be budgeted for. Things that we have deferred are replacing our pool exit doors. There's the glass doors that you notice on the pool deck. We're deferring that to the following year, and that's $7,500. We're deferring $9,000 of interior pool doors, and then resurfacing our parking lot, phase 2, which is south of the building. That's a $90,000 expenditure, and surveillance equipment for $20,000. And after we made our adjustments and did some budget amendments, right now, projected at the end of this fiscal year, we're looking at having a fund balance of $559,000. That's where we're at, and that's what we're doing here.
All right, well, I got a few relatively minor things, Director Scruggs, and I'll start with Councilwoman McClellan and with Mayor Pro Tem Pahar. This is, I guess, an issue that deals with the development of a long-term vision or priorities. But in recent years or months, have you and your staff had conversations about some small dollar improvements that could be done internally to the facility to make it more presentable, more appealing? I think I've mentioned to you in the past, painting. Anything like that been considered or evaluated?
Yeah, some of the painting can be done internally. If we were to bid out painting the whole restaurant, that's a pretty big expenditure. But for example, actually today we were talking with Brian Sproul to start looking at those smaller items like the lobby bathrooms, getting those painted, starting kind of working our way through the facility. So yes. But other what I would envision something like our lobby, kind of redoing the lobby. I don't have it budgeted for, but I could envision one of those big fireplaces in the corner with a TV over it, and then some nicer lounge furniture and whatnot.
I guess what I was getting at was some relatively small dollar figures that could improve not only the viability of the facility, but also make it more attractive. And the other thing that I would cite in addition to paint is I noticed in I'm assuming it was done in the women's bathroom as well, but upstairs there was that faux countertop put in that looks like granite. Maybe about a year ago.
Yeah,
A small change, but it makes that bathroom look a little bit nicer. And I think those types of things, although they seem small and insignificant, are really important. Because we know that our programming is outstanding. We know that it's an affordable facility that's accessible to people of all skill levels. Just making sure it's attractive is truly critical, at least to me. But we appreciate the work that you and your staff do, and thank you for your analysis this evening. I will transition to Councilwoman McCollum.
Yeah, I would echo those comments. And I would suggest that if you're going to make some of those small improvements that don't necessarily cost a lot, as a designer and as, to kind of have a full picture of that stuff before you start doing a little bit here and then doing something over here, because it's the whole building, I mean, if you can kind of lay out a scheme, what you want to do, and then work at it slowly, I think that'd be my recommendation. Because I think he's right, it's small things, and really not even, some of it maybe not even costing money, like moving some of the brochures over, just making it lay out, just little tweaks to that kind of stuff can make it really nice. Not that it's not really nice now. One question about the marketing. I know this is my thing, with the direct mail to the Ann Arbor, to that area code to the north of the rec center. Have we looked at doing that, or?
Yeah, we did look at doing that for our brochure, and honestly, it just was out of our price range. It is very expensive because we would have to more than triple the amount of brochures that we actually
I'm just always just interested to see what the effect would have if we marketed to some of those neighborhoods that are really next door to the
And
rec center.
we did two postcards to a greater,
Okay.
broader area.
Okay, so
And-
that's good.
And it does work.
I mean, just because they're right there, I mean, they're closer in Ann Arbor, in the Ann Arbor zip codes there than they are some of the south side Saline zip codes, so, just seems natural to me to
Right.
market to the next door neighbors kind of thing. And then just a comment about the batting cages, I think they're gonna be awesome, very successful. As someone that has a softball player that is on trail teams, they're always looking for open batting cages and stuff,
There's
so.
a big demand in Saline for something like that.
I think that's gonna be great. And then I don't know if you're gonna be planning on marketing or just pushing information out to all the travel teams. I mean, there's quite a few in the area.
Yeah, we have a lot of contact already with private teams, travel teams and all the leagues and SASA and
So
SAYDNS.
they're not gonna be open for,
No,
I mean, they'll be
think
open and
yeah.
busy all the time, I would
Yeah,
think, so.
we're gonna have a lot of business.
That's great. And then a question about the doors. So you mentioned that we're gonna split them into 2 different years. Are you gonna have the same doors? And will you be able to get the exact same doors
Yeah.
this year as you will next year?
Yes, the doors are pretty standard, they're the fire
Okay.
rated. Some are solid doors, some have the windows. So
Just the
those-
consistency thing again, just
Yeah.
that's
That's
one of my
it,
things,
those are
like,
standard.
when you're ordering fabric or something in here. Oh, it's gonna be discontinued next year, that kind of thing. And then I'm looking forward to the pool deck being resurfaced. That's one of the things that I think it will be a small, well, not necessarily a small change, but will make a big impact, so I think that was it for me.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bowden. Councilwoman Mitchell?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Scruggs. I always really appreciate your presentations. I appreciate your smart goals. They work. They're very specific. I had a couple of questions, and one of them is for every department. So what is the ER tax as it appears in all these different departments?
The employer tax, so that is our share, the employer, the city of Saline's share of the FICA.
Okay. So, because I noticed not only in your department it went up, but like it went up crazy. It seems like it went up a lot throughout a lot of departments. So for example, looking at the budget, under pool, Department 757, it's 208-757-709. Like in 2016, it was
Well, in
3,032.
26, okay, so.
And then, last year it was just under 10, and now it's estimated at 13, like it's just,
So the first year, we only split it out because that was a change we had with the software in 2016. Before, we were lumping it all into fringe benefits, now we need to start breaking it out. So that 2016 number is only half a year. And then the FY18 number stays, yes, and then there's a 2% sales rate increase, so we increase all benefits.
okay, so what I'm understanding is every department is reporting differently. Is that correct? And it's going to show that is the increase. That's why we have the increase for this draft for 2018? So,
2016 number is not a complete number.
Okay.
2016 number was only half of the year.
so it's better to compare 2017?
Yes.
Okay,
And
so,
then the 2018 number, or actually the 18 number, this is FY 19.
sorry.
Yeah, the FY 19 number will reflect the salary increase where the year before we didn't have it. So it went up
Okay.
by a percentage.
Okay, so I will go back and look at that and then reconfigure my question. So, Ms. Scruggs?
One thing with that,
Sure.
you'll notice the fringe benefit decrease.
Okay, and so that's a correlating change, okay. And I think overall, I just, like, things like office supplies, trying to give you a line for that. I think the ER tax was my biggest question, but like things like office supplies seemed like a bit of a jump. in tonight's packet. I'm sorry, I can't find the, I don't have this.
It's 752, 752.
Okay.
Office supply,
I just wrote a quick note, 752.
yeah, we went from 4,100 to 4,300. $200.
Right, okay. I'm trying to think.
White paper is going through the roof right now.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. Okay, so that's important for me to know, and that'll help with other department questions. And then, can you talk about your conference and training a little bit? I think it's on page 6 of our budget. It's got 2 stars by it, which, you know, I could run down and look at the note about it, but can you talk a little bit about?
Yeah, actually, what are the 2 stars?
Yeah, what are this means that there's a footnote that will be shown down later.
Really like that. You guys can do that, 'cause everybody else is doing that.
That's going to help. So the footnote is on what page then?
So it should be, what,
7?
Right underneath, yeah, M Parks. So conference and training is for all of my staff.
Okay.
Including some part-time staff, so a majority of it is our annual M-Parks conference, which is our state conference. And then I have money in for certified pool operator training for my facility manager. And then we have some kind of like frontline training, customer service training, dollar set aside for our frontline staff. And then also every spring, like May, early June, before kids camp starts, we do some training with all of our kids camp staff. First aid and things like that. So it's kind of a lump sum for a lot of different trainings.
Okay. Is this an appropriate time, Your Honor, to ask about an item in the general fund under Parks and Trees maintenance, or is that a different discussion? Okay. So under Parks and Trees maintenance,
Might be more of a DPW question, but if it's related to parks, bring it up. Yeah.
right. So I'm looking at our paperwork, page 18. That's the general fund budget. I know, it's so confusing, sorry. So under Parks and Trees maintenance, professional service miscellaneous, it's item 101-780-801-000. Sorry. Do you see where that is, or do you want me to come and show you where I'm looking?
Got it.
You got it? Okay. So can you talk a little bit about what has changed that your professional service, so let's see. Originally, it was 3,000 for year 18, and then the proposed 19 is 7,000.
Mr. Forrest, would you mind using Director Scruggs' microphone?
Thank you.
One of the items that comes out of that is a 2-year maintenance agreement with it's our tree maintenance program. So every 2 years, we have to pay a fee. So, and that fee, as most fees do, tend to go up over time. So if you look back at that line item over the past couple of years, you'll see a low year, a high year, a low year, a high year, with a upward trajectory overall.
Okay. So it should be, so because 19 is going to be higher, it's every other year. So for year 17 would be a good comparable number? And that's for the tree trimming, the arborist?
It's a program that we keep track of all of the city-owned trees in, and so there's sort of a condition assessment in there, and then it's basically our tree inventory. So when we take a tree down, we make a notation in there. When we have, whenever there's a report question about a tree, we'll assess the tree, enter that information in that program. And basically how we manage our, what we call the urban forest.
I see, okay. And so you're anticipating that it's going to go, you know, like the cost for year 17 was just under $4,900.
Yeah.
And it's going to go from that to 7,000?
Well, that's not the only item in there.
Oh,
But, so occasionally we'll need to hire a tree climber. We don't have anybody on staff who's certified for that type of tree removal. And we have some trees in the, basically they're in Salt Spring Park that we, at some point, anticipate we're going to need to get climbers in there
I
to
see.
aid with the removals. So
okay,
there's a little bit of extra funding in there for that as well.
okay. That answers all my questions, and thank you for hitting the general fund on that. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilwoman Dillon.
Ms. Mitchell hit my one question, so I won't touch on that. My other one, which was on the training numbers, this one is probably for me. What is a bank service charges and why are they $30,000?
The bank service charges are the credit card fees that we use all of the rec center takes on the credit card.
Online.
On your online payments. And so there's the fees that MasterCard, Visa, and the bank charges us. We are going out to look and see if we can get those done at a cheaper rate, but
Moly.
yeah. Every time you use a credit card, you know, there's a 30% on there, and if we don't pass it on to you, we absorb it.
Right.
At the city, because it's taxpayers, we pass it on to the taxpayer, because we can't absorb that cost. At the rec center, because it's fee-based on user fees, we absorb that. So that's the, instead, that's why ours are higher.
Okay. Okay, but you're actively looking at other methods?
Yes. Well, it's, I mean, they're all gonna be about the same, because it's pretty
Right.
much set by MasterCard, Visa, and American Express.
Can we build in to the fees that are charged, the additional bank fees?
Theory we already have.
Yeah.
It's part of normal operations.
Okay.
Just gonna add that much more.
It's just the cost of business.
Yeah,
I mean, you
okay.
could always go to an all cash basis, but nobody's looking at it.
Right, no, that, I can't imagine that, but, okay. I wanted to touch base about, you've mentioned a lot of strategies. Are these in place? Are they actual goals with benchmarks and deadlines and things like that? Or are these just ideas that are still building around?
Well, these are our goals for starting July 1. I mean, we're working on this year's goals, and we do touch base probably every other month at our Monday staff meetings and, you know, figure out where we're at, how we're doing, you know, what other things that we need to do. And we do keep them in mind, and everyone has them. I have mine posted on my wall. I know my staff does too. So we do keep track of those things and try to work towards those throughout the year.
Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not sure who this probably is, a Nikki, but the $150,000 that goes to the rec center from the general fund, did we decide that that money is what's paying the bond, and so they have to figure out a way to supplement their numbers on their own in that amount?
So out of the 150, what staff is proposing, this will be the first year that that debt service is paid. So that.
You know what, I'm having trouble hearing you, I'm so sorry. No.
Hey, Chase, can you turn up the microphones?
I'm sorry.
Right.
I think it's on now.
Is that better?
Yes,
Okay. Voila.
thank you.
Thanks, Chase. Sorry about that. So, yes,
There's the numbers.
so 127,000 for the debt service will come out of that, and the balance will continue to go in the rec center for current operations.
Okay. And so your budget takes that into account, and you found other avenues of revenue?
We're trying that, we're deferring expenditures.
Okay. Okay, so that's what I was going to hit on next, deferring expenditures. You've got a couple that have fallen into the FY '20 bucket. Do you have an income source, like an anticipated income source for those? At this point, are you looking at, because most of your expenses are ongoing expenses, they're not one time, so I don't see, I'm trying to find where, like, resurfacing the pool deck is gonna ever fit in.
Well, the resurfacing of the pool deck, we're now trying to look at a different strategy. And I kind of mentioned that, we're
Right.
phasing it over 3 to 4 years and putting in a more permanent solution, meaning tile, versus what we have, which is basically like a painted on, it's military grade type of a textured surface. That we know within 5 to 7 years, we're gonna have to redo that. Spend a significant amount of money continuously. So we are looking at these strategies to try to come up with a better solution, because if we're gonna spend the money, we would like it to be longer than 5 years, basically. But regarding your other question, some of these things being pushed off, looking for different types of money sources is one of our goals. Resurfacing of parking lots, I don't know, that I don't have a solution for it as of right now. Potentially, we had kind of talked about this, but investigating into, I don't know if a DNR grant would be a solution, because that part was developed by 2 DNR grants. So that is one avenue that I'm looking into, to see if, there could be like a match from the city or whatnot, and get some of it funded through the DNR.
Okay. And are you pursuing, I don't know if still should be inserted in this question, pursuing Washtenaw County for revenue sources?
So actually, we did just have a meeting with Washtenaw County last week to meet with the new director, Coy Vaughn. And the thing, the money that they have is primarily for connecting communities, which is trails, non-motorized pathways, trying to reach the border to border, trying to connect, obviously us to Pittsfield, to York, to Lodi, so on and so forth. It's not for operations of a facility or for improvements of a facility. And they are very open to us applying for these grants and so on and so forth, which there's 4 years, I believe, available for that, which is something that we're looking at bringing forward to council to say, hey, here's our 4-year project, what we'd like to apply for the connecting communities.
Okay. Okay. I'm afraid with like resurfacing the pool deck and, this liner in the pool, these are all necessities that you can only put them off so long. And so I'm very nervous that if something isn't in place for them, that the city is going to have to step in, and then we're going to have to try to figure out how to jockey that. And so I was hoping that there was some other, method and source that we could look at.
If I could,
Yes, please.
so a couple things. One, the MAR site, for the bottom of the pool, that is proposed to be in this coming budget. So certainly agree with that wholeheartedly. That's important, needs to be done. And then it's Beijing trying to find using a different strategy, right, to do the deck. But also, one of the other things that, as far as potential revenue source, there's a second bond that is current for the rec center. That was for the 2006 improvements and updates. And so that's about 100 in the debt service, and that's about 112,000 a year. And so one thought or proposal would be that retires, I think, in 2023, 2024, and after that, that could potentially free up some dollars for operations. So that's another strategy.
Right. No, that would be a great revenue source, but I mean, that's still, what, 5 years out? And some of these things are going to have to be dealt with. And I just don't want to be in another position where we were with the roof, where all of a sudden things have to be done and we're put into a position where we're going to have to find a revenue source to deal with it. So that makes me a little bit nervous. I guess the other thing I just wanted to touch on was, and I think I've asked you this before, and I'm sorry, I just don't recall your answer, about the batting cages. Are you allowing outside people, outside coaching staff in to utilize these, or are you going to be using rec center staff?
Probably a combination of both. We'd be renting them for people to use.
Right.
And that, not to run their own business.
Well, that's what I guess that's what I wanted to make sure is.
We have a rule already established regarding personal training. But we also have some in-house, have an in-house professional soccer player that does things for us already. And we might be looking at a golf instructor that we would use as an independent contractor or so on and so forth. So we're establishing all that right now, but definitely it would be a rental, and then also we would run our own programs through that.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask about the batting cages is, it does seem as though there's a high demand for it, but what is the flip side of the gym not being available for other activities that members?
It's only part of the gym.
Okay, so it's
They'd be
not
at
going to
the-
impact what members would be able to do at all?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Councilwoman Dunn?
I'm fine for right now, thank you.
Mr. Gearbox?
Just a couple items regarding fund balance. Looking at, the progression of fund balance from 2017 to what's projected from 2018 to 2019, and yet we're still contributing $23,000 in from the general fund. Can you explain to me what that 104 increase is as a result of this year from going? We budgeted that we were only going to have 455 in terms of designated assigned amounts in the fund balance. Yeah, now we're going to be at 559, 151. Do we have that much more revenue coming in or reduction in expenses? I'm just trying to figure out why our fund balance is up significantly over the prior year.
Dean, can you let me know what page you're on?
It's on page
It's 13.
Which line?
13, the bottom line.
Oh, just the, for 2017-18 amended budget. Right.
So I'm comparing our original budget to our
Right,
projected.
the 104,000 of the amended. Looks like she had significant revenue increases.
What?
Joanne, do you know what the 104,000 is for the amended?
A piece of that was the deck flooring is coming out of FY '17, and that is spread over, and what she said, that was $52,000 there. That's coming out. She's reducing some of the part-time salaries in classes and programs like that, and then she did raise some revenue a little bit, so.
I just wanted to know whether that was recurring, if there was some shifts. Part of my thing is when we talk about some of these final or other expenses, we have a significant fund balance that's sitting here. And it appears to be about 20% of the overall revenue. I'm not sure what the percentage is, and I'm looking at that, but our 17%. Considering that this was not necessarily always intended to be a savings account, the reason we put it in here was to cover the shortfalls that we're projecting. We're not seeing those like funds here that are available to resolve some of those issues, it may mean reducing this fund balance down somewhat, but considering that we don't look at each individual fund as a percentage, but we look at the overall total fund, I would like to see us address some of these long-term solutions that you mentioned by incurring that expense in the next year or so, and using those funds for that. So we shouldn't set on these funds when we know that we do have some definite needs, and we fix this building at this point, we're committed to it. The other part of it, the additional $23,000 coming in, which basically gets us back to almost what our fund balance was previously. I don't know why we're continuing to contribute funds into it to help offset a structural issue when it's not really there.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, you just mentioned, the proposed is to reduce that fund balance by $90,000, right? So, the idea is, as I mentioned earlier, about the getting through until 2023, retire that debt service on the other bond. Forward.
Sorry.
Sorry. Is that better?
No.
There's something going on with this.
Here, trade
I don't
with
think
me.
anyone will.
Really? Yeah, no.
So we notice.
How is that? Oh, much better. Okay, very good. So, again, sorry about that. So, the idea is to try and manage, right, responsibly manage our expenses to get through, and still, again, I say responsibly, and I agree, trying to do as many of those capital improvement projects as we can, but we don't want to go through this money so quickly that all of a sudden it goes. I mean, it's gonna just for operations, it's gonna go down. I mean, so without that additional revenue, that $150,000, it's gonna go down significantly, and it could go down pretty quickly. That a little over $500,000 could recede pretty quickly if we did all those capital projects. So that's my concern.
But appears to me that, we're going down $110,000 or $111,000 in the fund balance, which is pretty much your one-time item. So we're talking about a $111,000 draw for capital projects over the next 2 years. Is that probably what we're doing?
Well, I mean,
Unless something significantly happens where the expenses go up and we lose on our revenue.
correct. I mean, that's what we want to, we want to be able to manage it and see how the revenue, right, is membership staying at least at where it's at? Is it growing? Is it declining? And then if we feel, if there's, it is a little bit reactionary, and we certainly don't like to do that, but like I said, at the same time as we're trying to get through, because of the additional debt payment, trying to get through the next 6-7 years to hopefully utilize that revenue source potential, at least a portion of it. Because I agree, I mean, that's not our intent. It's not to grow this huge. I think, just like you may recall, I think we got up to, in about 2009 or 10, maybe, we were up to about a 35% fund balance in the general fund. But you may recall, even though with a lot of cutting and, which I think responsible spending, we still went through that over the next 4 or 5 years. I think we got it down to as low as like 7%, something like that, of fund balance, which, I was, so.
It's just that where we're seeing this, and then we have overall fund balance, I just want to make sure that, I just believe that we've seen this grow, we don't have the other 2 years existing, but it's continued to grow over the last 3 or 4. What you're projecting is really, I think, a really conservative approach, and I think we've been really conservative. Not that I want to spend this all in 1 year, but the fact that if we could spend another $50,000 to resolve a long-term problem.
Sure.
Why don't we do this, because I can't imagine there would be objection to the dais. Director Scruggs, between now and our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks when we reconvene to discuss the budget, perhaps you and the finance department, working with the city manager and your staff, can identify some ways in which some additional dollars in your fund balance could be spent while still maintaining a healthy percentage in that account if, God forbid, something occurred and we were forced to finance and subsidize some sort of a repair or remodel. Okay.
And then the only other thing, and I would have not even noticed it until Ms. Mitchell mentioned, the ER tax, is that formula driven or is it, because I'm looking at some of the lines and where we have salary decreases versus salary increases, the numbers don't correspond with 7%.
Should be salary.
It should be all salaries.
It should be.
Salaries over time.
You didn't give me one of those, you had that.
Yeah, an example, I would look at,
On her budget or our general fund?
in this page 5.
Oh, okay.
Even on the one where it's, where it has $95 over time, the overall salaries went down. Well, the one with Carla's salary and everything, the amount that's indicated there for the prior year, and then it's indicated for this year is exactly the same, even though there's a $2,800 increase on merit. And when you look at the other one where the temp salaries are, it was approximately, just look at it, I'm not gonna get into the numbers, but there is some correlation that doesn't look like it's the 7% during the formula.
Okay. Well, it includes the overtime, the part-time, and the salaries for all the departments, too.
Yeah, just look at it. So that might be it is. It's just not-
And longevity will be included in it, too. So we'll look at it, but it is, I mean, I'll have Julian
Maybe it's
already
in
doing
different
it.
lines and I'm just using the two salary lines.
And there's different lines, because you also have to include overtime and that longevity line.
Anything else, Mr. Gearboff? Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Tahar?
Thank you. All of my questions and many more have already been asked, so I'll pass. Thank you.
Benefit of going last.
That's right.
Well, Director Scruggs, we appreciate your time. Of course, in the interim, if folks have questions that pertain to the Parks and Rec Department, please direct those messages to the city manager, and between his office, our finance department, and Parks and Rec, we will get you the answers you need. I would add, because I would hate for this to be lost in our discussion, but the financial viability of the rec center is really ensured by making sure we have people using it. And of course, that was the genesis for developing the facility more than 25 years ago, is to encourage our citizens to live active and healthy lives. And so I think you do an excellent job towards accomplishing that goal, and I would hate to lose sight of that in this discussion. Needless to say, managing the finances in an appropriate and prudent way is of paramount importance, but it's getting people in the doors, being active, engaging in fellowship. That's the true benefit to the community. So, Director Scruggs, thank you. Chief Hart, can we follow the same format that we used for Director Scruggs? Do you want to give an overview, talk about any significant changes, long-term goals and strategies, and then we'll open it up for questions from the dais?
Sounds great.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
I'm just going to kind of walk through the memo that I had prepared last week. And what I tried to do was formulate the police department's budget around our strategic planning session, Goal 5. As you can see, operational effectiveness, look for joint services, additional opportunities with other communities. Kind of took an opportunity to extend that a little bit, other organizations, volunteers through our community, etc. One of the first things I'd like to draw your attention to is the Volunteers in Public Safety program that I would like to start here within the city of Saline. The state law allows police departments to solicit volunteers and then properly train them in the issuance of handicap parking violations and other parking citations. Sergeant Mag has been given that project along with a template and training programs that other police departments have used. And we are to the point where we're probably about 75 to 80% along with this program. And what we would do is allow our volunteers to come in. We would supply them with a hat, a shirt, some like khaki pants. We would provide them with a retired police vehicle that was properly marked as volunteers for our community, and we would have trained them on where our public parking lots are, and obviously all the rules that surround those, and then expect them to go out and check our parking lots, our private parking lots. They cannot write tickets on public streets. But go out and check our parking lots for handicap parking violations. It really gives our citizens an opportunity to give back to our community. And if there's one thing that I've really noticed here in my 95-plus days, is that there is a tremendous spirit of volunteerism in our community. And I know in my previous community, we did have a lot of folks that stepped up, that came out and wanted to be a part of a volunteer program with the police department. Had some conversations with some community members that reached out, and they stated they would also like to do something around maybe our bus stops in the morning, kind of provide an extra level of security for them. Fortunately, I was able to secure a grant. Sergeant Jay Basso was named Police Officer of the Year for Washtenaw County. So the Washtenaw 100 generously provided a grant of $2,500 to be used for any type of project within the police department. So I drafted a memo to them, explained this program, and they have graciously sent us off a $2,500 check that we can use for this program. Something that I've been in discussions with is a school resource officer with Superintendent Graydon, City Manager Campbell, and myself in attempting to really launch a SRO program for our community. We have 5 schools, a little over 3,000 students, and a little over 350 staff members in our community that I believe strongly benefit from a school resource officer. And the way that we have structured this program as is that and this is strictly at a proposal level right now, is that the schools would pay for a senior level police officer salary, 75% of it, and that would allow us to fund a new police officer coming into the program. And of course, we would have to put go through the hiring process and then get a new staff member through the field training officer program, which is generally about an 18-week-long program. So that's something that we're actively working with our school district and trying to find a way to fund this program. Had meetings up, I believe it was last Thursday, and the plan right now is for myself and Assistant Superintendent Kurt Ellis to go to the May 8th school board meeting and make a presentation at that point to the board and try to get some support for that program. Going on to vehicle purchase, there's $40,000 in the budget currently for a police vehicle. What I'd like to do is something a little different. Our squad cars right now, I believe several years ago, around 2013 or 14, there were 2 squad cars that were purchased together. So even though we have vehicles that are around the 4 to 5 year mark in age and have around 50,000 miles on them, they're still in pretty good shape right now. They may need the seats, the driver seats, to be rebuilt at some point, because keep in mind, for 8 hours a shift, almost 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, there's someone driving around in that patrol car, and the seats do tend to break down in those. So certainly we want to offer the support with all the gear that are on the belt. We may have to rebuild some seats in those vehicles. But what I'd like to do is take the vehicle that's currently assigned to me, which is a 2006 Ford Explorer, repurpose that either to an SRO or to the VIPS program, and have that properly marked up with graphics. And then basically turn the chief's vehicle into a backup squad car, where it would be equipped with everything except the rear cage and a plastic seat. So in the event we had a squad car go down, we had one down for about 3 or 4 days last week with a radio issue, or one of our officers involved in an accident, something along those lines, we would be able to take a vehicle and put right into the fleet and a replacement versus ordering one from a dealership, which could take 2 to 4 months, and then getting that vehicle upfitted. Of course, I would be forfeiting my vehicle at some point to put into this program. It would also be used as a traffic car. We put the computer and the camera system in it. But I feel it's a proper thing to do to replace that 12-year-old vehicle and also get another vehicle into the fleet, especially as a backup. So that would be my plan for that vehicle. Expenditure, we have a $5,000 increase proposed for training. You've heard me present many times before that I'm working very hard with other agencies, specifically the Sheriff's Office, to do some joint training efforts, opening up our Police Department Training Center to training agencies. Usually you can get 1 or 2 spots for free. But there's other things that we really need to focus on in training within the police department. We need 1 or 2 people trained in ALICE, which is an active killer response program. Those are usually week-long programs. I'm thinking that we're a relatively small department, so to speak, so when we have 1 or 2 officers out in training, sometimes that does cause a staffing issue, and we have to backfill those positions. So those are some of the trainings I look at. We need a communications training operator classes. We currently have 2 this week that are out at that training. Field training officer programs. It's very important to keep up on contemporary issues when you're training new staff members. And I always think it's great to bring in new staff members as well to an organization because it keeps other folks sharp as well because there's a lot of questions that get asked. So staff are being tested constantly by new staff members. My meeting with the sheriff and other chiefs of police has been bumped to April 23rd. So I hope to have some good news on that. So if you wanted to correct the memo on that, that would be great. And there's also some national programs for women in law enforcement. Officer Detling is at a conference today and tomorrow up in Novi at the Suburban Collection Showplace on contemporary issues with women in law enforcement. There's also a great 5-day program that's generally held out of state that in my previous employment felt was very worthwhile for our female staff members to attend. So those are some of the training programs that I would like to get our staff members into. Not an inclusive list, but just some of the items that I would like to get them trained in. Looking at our reserve and cadet programs, I really want to focus on rebuilding those programs in the next 12 months. I've had some interest in one gentleman who is a reserve officer in another community in Wayne County. Heard about some great things going on in the city of Saline. So he's looking to bring his training and his expertise over to our community, and we can increase our reserve staff by at least 1. Had a young man from the high school who's interested in being a police officer. So we're trying to sign him up as a cadet right now. He'll be off to Eastern Michigan next year. Again, tapping into that volunteer spirit of the community for those 2 programs. And some things that have just been natural for me over the last 27 years is leveraging bidding processes to really get our best prices for uniforms, dry cleaning, car washes, things along those lines. Officer Schnook right now is working on the uniform bid right now, identifying the specific model numbers, the manufacturer of things that we need. And I understand that we have Northeastern that's right here in our backyard, but I think it's a very good idea to go through and try to get competitive prices to really leverage our dollars for those specific items. Non-financial initiatives that we're looking at is really working collaboratively with staff. We need to create a mission, vision, and value statement. I want that to be a joint effort with our staff members and really a short statement of our purpose, services, goals of operations, and values that we honor is very important to me. The things that have been bulleted below there, those are chiefs must-have. I know that I give away a lot of power and really elicit a lot of, ideas from staff members and want them to be a joint member of this decision. But there's things like proactive policing that are very important to me. We see police departments across the country that their officers are shutting down. They're not going out and being proactive. And as you'll see at our next council meeting with my quarterly report, you'll be pleasantly surprised with the proactive efforts that our police officers are out there doing the first quarter of this year versus last year. Following the golden rule for not only external customers but internal, it's how we treat each other. Engaging in community-oriented policing, traffic safety, leveraging social media, and one that's of particular interest and near and dear to my heart is relentless follow-up and assessment of crime and quality of life issues. Those are very important to me. So those are just some of the suggestions and things that we will see in the mission, vision, and values. In our FTO and CTO manuals, our CTO was just recently refreshed, and we're working on the FTO. And one that's not listed on here that developed late last week is a brand new policy on our awards. So we're going to be restructuring our awards, and I think it's something that not only our staff members but City Council will be very proud of. to have an awards ceremony annually. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Chief, thank you for your presentation, and more importantly, we appreciate your leadership. I just have a few remarks, and then I'll turn the floor over to Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. First of all, and you and I have had a number of discussions about this topic, but your efforts to revitalize, strengthen, or implement reserve, cadet, or volunteer programs, I think is outstanding. And so I encourage that, and whatever we or I individually can do to support that, be sure to let me know. Because I think you're right. This community, there is a real strong emphasis on volunteerism, and also a really strong emphasis and value for our police department, and a respect for what you do, and a desire to assist. So my only question, and I think I've touched on this topic with you on a few occasions, and I talked to both of your predecessors about this. The ratio, Chief, of having a dispatcher, a sergeant, and 2 road patrol officers on every shift, I think is critical, and directly related to the community's safety, well-being, and one of the points that you touched on about appropriately following up with people and resolving cases, I think having adequate staffing levels those are interwoven. Can you talk, so there's a number of sort of questions and comments embedded in my statement. One is your ongoing efforts to recruit individuals. I know in recent years the number of part-time police officers that we have been able to call upon has dwindled to essentially none. And I think that's more of a reflection of the state of policing rather than the Saline Police Department specifically. So I'm wondering, one, if you can comment on that ratio, and whether in the ensuing years as we continue to grow, how we should look at growing our ranks, and secondarily, your efforts to recruit the brightest and the best, not only full-time employees, but some additional part-time employees to fill those gaps.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel the same way you do as far as part-time officers, bringing part-time staff in. I did have a gentleman reach out to me who recently retired from the Sheriff's Department, who has an interest in joining the Saline Police Department. I've known this gentleman for a couple of years, helped him out with a staff and command project. So I know there's interest in retired police officers who I would describe as kind of being plug and play. So they know the system, they understand prosecutors, how they work, etc. So it's very important, the word's kind of getting out that we're doing some great things here in the city of Saline and the Saline Police Department. So the idea that we have folks that are reaching out to other staff members and myself is very encouraging. The danger with folks like that is their longevity and how long they will stick around. But in a part-time capacity, it certainly would be something that I will be trying to bring more folks on. And City Manager Campbell and I have had discussions about where the budget is within part-time staff. As far as recruiting new police officers, I do participate in Washtenaw Community College Police Academy interviews. So I do have an opportunity as new police officers are trying to enter the academy, and I get kind of that first glimpse at them, look at their integrity and their honesty and what their background is. And the city of Saline here is unique in the sense that you get to do just about everything, but you may not have a title. You may not have a title, bless you, investigator or detective or what have you, but you get to follow a case from the incident when it's reported, and maybe you're the reporting officer, through to a natural conclusion. So those would be the folks that I would be looking at. So as the year goes on and there's opportunity to onboard new staff, is participating in job fairs is very important. And reaching out to other colleagues, because sometimes there's opportunities to bring on staff members that maybe other agencies couldn't bring on that really speak highly of them. And also the ratio, I guess, is the last part of your question, is the dispatcher, the sergeant. So today, we have a staff member, our daytime dispatcher is at CTO training. So we had a sergeant that was the dispatcher, then we had 2 officers on the road, and we had an arrest last night, a felony arrest that had to be processed today. So once we received that back from the from the prosecutor's office, I actually took that and went over to the service center in Washtenaw County, and I swore to the complaint warrant in front of Magistrate Fink. So those are sometimes the complexity. It's a team effort within the city. And what I want to start doing is tracking and then supplying this information on maybe a quarterly basis in my quarterly report on what our staffing levels really look like. To give folks here a glimpse of what our day looks like, I implemented a shift procedure, which goes out every morning at about 6 o'clock in the morning. And it lays out our staff members for each shift, day shift, afternoons and nights. Who's off, why are they off? Is it a leave day? Let's say, it's a Monday, Tuesday, and that's my leave day. Any special assignments that we have, if we have a situation where folks are going through disobeying traffic control device on Michigan Avenue over by Industrial and cutting, traffic, then those items are listed on there as well. So trying to give them a glimpse of what our day looks like too. So somebody may not be feeling the best, but they look and kind of see that we're down to minimum staffing on afternoons, and they can still make it in, and that's something that I think that shift procedure kind of does for them, is give them a glimpse of staffing. But it's challenging. I'm not going to be untruthful and tell you that it's not at times, but it is. And it's a very, it's a delicate schedule, because if someone gets sick, and we've had, just like other workforces, right? We've had the flu that moved through in December, January. Now we have some crazy upper respiratory bug, where I'll come in and the officers, they don't look very well, but they felt dedicated and committed enough to the community where they came in and worked their midnight shift, but they just look horrible. And if they wouldn't have come in, created overtime. So I guess to answer your question, it's a very delicate system. We try to work within it. I will tell you that police officers and sergeants and dispatchers do a wonderful job of trying to move schedules around and work with us on that. So I'm very proud of that. But I think we need to have a metric in place that really talks about the number of sworn staff and the dispatchers that we have each day.
I think that's excellent, and I appreciate that you're very cognizant of this issue and on top of it and doing your utmost to recruit and groom people to assume new responsibilities within the department. And I'll also state for the public record, again, just to make this crystal clear, this is not a problem that is unique to Saline. There are agencies throughout the state, throughout the region, including the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, an outstanding public safety department that at times is begging people to apply for jobs.
It's a challenging market. There's one agency up in Oakland County that I sat on a promotional board for. They're looking for 46 police officers due to turnover.
Yeah.
So it's a challenging market right now.
Indeed. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Mayor Pro Tem Tar.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the highlights, Chief. I want to say in general, excuse me, this is very clear and helpful and useful, and I think indicates that you're moving things forward in very good directions that I like this a lot. I'm interested in the Volunteers in Public Safety program. So have you used one of these, worked with one of these before? And can you talk about, and whether or not you have, talk about a little bit about how you recruit, how such volunteers are recruited, what kind of screening happens? You mentioned training, so maybe a little less about that, but sort of recruitment and training is just an interesting question mark in my mind.
Okay. Yeah, the answer to have I been involved in these programs, yes. At my previous employer, we had around 40. And it started in the mid-90s with just a handicap enforcement team. And then we kind of migrated into doing some home and business checks as folks are out of town. That's something that we've recently had a refresh on, our Home Watch program. So that'll be coming out very shortly via social media. So we do find, and you use the Sign Up Genius. It's very simple because the volunteers can get on and see the available shifts that are out there, and they can sign up for the program, and we know, and that'll eventually kind of migrate to the shift procedure as well, so we know who our volunteers will be for the day. And we find that folks just want to get involved in their community, and it might be someone that works Monday through Friday that wants to volunteer on a Saturday or a Sunday. It's sometimes folks that are retired that want to come out and just be a part of the program, and it gives us an opportunity to network with them as well and kind of share the good things that we're doing at the police department and throughout the city. And really how we're going to get the word out is we're going to have kind of a kickoff meeting. I anticipate doing some type of a a video on social media, kind of pushing that out on our Facebook page, working with Tran, who's sitting over there, trying to get the word out on that. And then just kind of have a very brief kind of overview of what the program is at the kickoff meeting. And I hope that at that point, we're going to really see a few people that will be stepping out.
And is there a screening of potential volunteers that you
Yes.
then do? I mean, how do you figure out who will be good at what?
So what we do is they would fill out an application for volunteer, just like anyone else would, and we would screen that person. We would be looking at, do they have a criminal record? What is their background like? What is their driving record? Things that are very important to us, and that's part of the program as well, is talking about you're a representative of the city of Saline, right? So you have to follow the traffic laws just like everyone else does. So it's kind of a complex training program, but also very simple in the sense that you're just filling out, if you do have a violation, a very simple ticket that's easy to follow along.
Okay, great. That's kind of information I was looking for. And if I can ask one more, I wanted to ask about, and you've kind of led into this, your use of social media, which I've observed you on Twitter and on police department on Facebook. So what has been, how do you assess the public response, the community's response to the increased activity on social media?
If you have a dog that's lost, you get the most views and the most likes and the most shares. But, I think it's been great. And I will tell you from two perspectives. One, being the community. I feel that, and the mayor kind of touched on that earlier, is that the community is very supportive of the police department. They're second to none, but the staff members. And I've told them from the very beginning, this is not about me. This is about you folks. So when we do things, a lot of times you will see, you may hear me talking, like, hi, this is, Chief Hart, I'm here with Officer Detling and Clerk Fundel and Dispatcher Ritchie. Today's National Women's Day, or International Women's Day. We want to thank these great ladies for all they do. So for them to kind of have their face and their name out there and receive that recognition, I believe it's been very rewarding from them. That's the feedback that I get. There are times where I will step out and kind of be on the video. But I think it's been a great experience. And folks really, you have to time it right.
Yes.
Early in the morning, sometimes around 6 or 7 at night seems to be the best times to kick something out on social media. Otherwise, folks are at work and they're not supposed to be on social media. But that's generally my experience with it. I think it's been well received.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Gearba?
Not really too much. The only thing, of course, we continue the discussions about having a school resource officer. Where I'm trying to understand is, I know how the 75% would benefit greatly, but how a 25% would benefit us in terms of, I wonder how that would actually benefit us in terms of how you would spread that around. I know it's another body, but you could pull it in versus when you're assigned out to the schools. So that's just one of my concerns with that position. And the other thing is, I'm glad that you came up with this solution, is I think the rest of us are volunteers in the department and such, because that is an aspect of it, which is expensive undertaking, but if we did someone who that not knowing how you supervise and understand when situations come up and how you handle those to volunteers and be put on the hot plate, would be interesting to understand too. And the only other thing is, when I look at it, in terms of how we discuss this school officer and academic, is understanding what potential legacy costs could be as a result of bringing that position on board, and all of a sudden the schools decide, oh, well, we're not going to fund it because they've done that before. And then all of a sudden we're stuck with kind of a potential problem. So just hear that as a quick concern.
Sure. The 25%, really, I guess I would look at this as they're funding a new police officer. And really that officer is going to be assigned to the schools and school functions pretty much year-round. There's Safety Town and other things that go on during the break. Having served in a position like this before, they're really kind of gaining, another administrator with the schools, because done right, the school resource officer becomes, another staff member for the school district, a decision maker for them. someone to lean on for advice. And so really, they're funding a new position, and it would be, I think we're looking, sir, at 3-year contract, a 3-year contract. And I will tell you, I think once we launch this, kind of had a failure to launch, in the last year or two. Once we launch this program, they would have to fall, in my opinion, on some very hard times to not fund it. Because the SRO does become a very integral part of the staff there. And to me, this sets Saline apart from other districts in the sense that we would have a specifically designed, designated SRO for our 5 schools and all those staff members and students year-round. And it's a more proactive effort. Yes, if some bad thing takes off at the school, we expect the school resource officer to step up. That's just a part of it. It's really the proactive stuff every day as the SRO gets in and teaches those team modules that's teaching, educating, and mentoring through the state police program. That's, I think, where we receive the most benefit, and our students do. They're really the clear winners of this. There's no way to figure out a formula on whether the city makes out better than the school district and vice versa. It's our kids that really win this.
And then the only last thing is, I know we've done this in the past, but assessing the dispatchers. And at least when we do all the balancing out the police forces and the dispatchers and whatever sources that we're able to do. It's field already made a decision, well, we've made a decision. But again, when it comes down to where do we need to have policing versus dispatching and administrative, we're also going to have this place. So as we move forward, I think that's all we're going to do. So glad to consider innovation.
Councilwoman Dillon.
Okay. I also very much appreciate your memo. And I'm going to hit on a few things from the memo, and then I want to hit into the numbers really quickly. On your volunteers, I guess I wanted to know, and this might be for Mr. Campbell, what is the city's liability in having someone that's not a city employee driving a city vehicle, and, you get somebody that's a little overzealous that decides they want to be their own little renegade sheriff, and, I guess that's what I would want to know is, what our liability would be.
Sure. So the way I would answer that is that where I came from, Sturgis, we had a VIPS program. I know Novi has a VIPS program. They're nationwide, and especially you see some of them in your larger departments where they do a lot. Some of the larger departments around the country, they even, for instance, at a traffic crash, once oftentimes police officer gets done doing what they need to do, and then they're potentially waiting for the tow truck, for instance, to arrive. There are some, and I'm not suggesting we would do this. We're not, but I'm just the extent of where you see them being used is they'll actually the VIPS person then shows up and relieves that police officer. Then the police officer can get back on the road to do what they need to do. So there's a lot of things that they can do, and so we would certainly the training that the chief talked about, the expectations that to certainly limit the opportunity for someone to freelance, if you will, get a little overzealous. But I think, Chief, did you want to?
I can weigh in.
Sure.
Yes, please.
At City Manager Campbell's direction, I had a phone conference with MML representatives and L last Wednesday, I believe it was. We not only talked about reserve officers, but we talked about the VIPS program as well. And I probably should have clarified a little bit more in the memo. There will always be 2 together. So there's kind of a check and balance in there. So if there is more than one, if there's a VIPS volunteer who's starting to go off the rails or is having some issues, then we would expect the other volunteer to speak up. There will be a sergeant that's in charge of the program. They will also be required to fill out a log of their activities. So there's a lot of accountability measures that are in there as well. But MML seem to be very comfortable. They have been aware of other programs before. And I'm trying to think of in 10 or 15 years of my previous employer, other than activities that they engaged in outside of their volunteer work at the department, maybe getting themselves in trouble in the community or outside the community, which would cause the removal of the program. But it's also going to have a good policy that's associated with it as well.
Right, okay. But I would like detailed liability, addressed. That, I appreciate what you're both saying. I guess I am just not sure of, you've got someone that's not a city employee that's driving a city vehicle. And, if they are involved in some sort of an incident while in that vehicle, is the city absorbing that liability as they're, in the course of their duties?
Sure.
And so I guess I would just want to, because it just seems like there's endless possibility of they weren't properly trained for a particular situation. So I mean, I'm not trying to poo-poo on this program because I think it's a great idea, especially as far as parking enforcement is concerned. I think that it would be wonderful because we would get the best of both worlds. We'd be able to keep our officers on the road as well as still enforce. I just want to make sure that that the liability. So, and I'll just stop with that there. As far as the SRO is concerned, so they would still be a Saline police officer?
Correct.
So theoretically, could a current officer apply for that position? And would he transfer all of his tenure to it, or is this starting the clock again?
The idea would be to assign a current police officer to be the SRO and then backfill with a new police officer.
Okay,
So one of our existing 12 members, well, really 9, because I wouldn't want to draw from the command structure. So one of the 9 police officers would have an opportunity to go into this temporary limited assignment.
okay. And I guess with that, I will ask, we have several officers that are seasoned officers and are going to be eligible for retirement for years of service. And so I guess I'm just trying to figure out if putting them into a position like that, I mean, is going to prolong them staying on the force? Or is it going to be disruptive in that they're going to get in there, learn the methodology, learn everything, and then retire off? So because I think part of that type of a program is knowing the environment. So you're going to want somebody that's going to stay
Chief, I don't
long
mean to cut you
term.
off. I'll let you answer this, and then I'm already running behind for our next meeting. Are you able to attend our next budget meeting 2 weeks from today?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Ladies, I apologize, but you'll get first crack at asking him questions when we reconvene in 2 weeks. Please answer. Latest question.
I think the staff member that's most interested in serving in this capacity has shared with me that they have no intent on leaving in the next 4 to 5 years.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Went a little longer than I had hoped, but I thought it was a good discussion. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Mr. Fordyce, my apologies that we didn't get to you, but you'll have ample time to go over your department, its needs, and future goals and objectives in 2 weeks. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn the work meeting at 7:32 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Dearborn, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by McClellan. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, meeting is adjourned. We're going to start the regular meeting in about 3 minutes.